yourself in a position to communicate effectively with your team and keep them bought into this process? Well, a lot of it's going to be through your meetings. But to be an effective communicator, you need to, or a facilitator, you need to be able to effectively communicate. Now, in the last class, I shared an example from a researcher named Albert Moravian. This is from the 70s. He was working at the University of California, Los Angeles. In your Basecamp folder, I've shared a small article about Albert Moravian that has links to additional resources so you can find out more about him. And why this is important for you as a facilitator is to understand that no matter how clear we think something is, and this relates back to DISC as well, because we understand it through our own lens and through our own experience and through the own strategies and our own strategies that we've adopted. No matter how clear we think it is, it's not going to be as clear to others. Especially, and what this really comes around to is especially based on how they're interpreting what we communicate. Now, Albert Moravian, in his studies that he did in the late 70s, and he wrote a book about in the early 80s, was based on the fact that there's three forms of communication, or three very important attributes of communication: body language, voice, and language. Now, since the time of those studies, the metaphor of dance, music, and lyrics has become very popular. Dance meaning body language, music being voice, and lyrics meaning language, words. And, you know, if you were to research this online, this is how you come across, and you'd find a wide amount of data about this. But Albert Moravian is where it came from, and Albert Moravian is one I think that really hit closest to the mark, because he was very smart in the fact that when he did this work, he wasn't talking about communication in general. He was talking about communicating ideas, opinions, and beliefs, and feelings. And so even when I talk about opinions are driven by these beliefs and feelings. And when we're trying to communicate these things that are very important to us, it's important to note that body language, voice, and language proportionally have a different effect in terms of how we're understood. Now, what this would look like, and based on these arrows, is, spoiler alert, body language is a majority proportion of communication. Now, what this means is that you as a team leader, you're trying to communicate to the team about how important the purpose is. And, you have feelings running high about this because this is work that you're bought into and you want to get the team involved in. However, the team's pretty stressed out at this particular point. Emotions are running high. And depending on how you communicate this, and depending on the narrative that your team members have running in their mind going into this meeting, they might be paying more attention to how you're behaving as opposed to what you're saying. And Albert Moravian's research would actually suggest that if what you're communicating to them does not align with what their beliefs or the experience they're having at that particular time are, they're going to be creating a different narrative in their head about what you're saying. And so what you're saying won't resonate with them in the way that you would hope or the way that you understand it. What they're doing is they're interpreting not only what you're saying, but they're also taking a look at other physical cues, and they're adding their own interpretation to that. And that could effectively undermine your message. What that would look like is, if you're frustrated by the fact that the team is not working towards this goal, or you're frustrated or not confident in your ability to convey to them the importance of it because you yourself question it, because is this the right time for me to pushing it? I know it's my job, but should I really be doing this? And yet you still try to convey something. Your body is going to have there's going to be a physiological response that you're not going to be aware of, but others can detect. That's going to be, your tone of your voice might waver. It might be higher pitched. You might be speaking faster or louder. You might be more agitated in your body language in terms of moving around, using your hands maybe more than you should be. There'll be a lot of different cues that are suggesting to the people that are listening to you that, hey, what's really going on here? What's David, what's Erwin really trying to communicate to me? Because his body language doesn't align with his messaging. And even though you might think they're listening, they're actually having their own internal dialogue. So when you're facilitating these meetings, it's incredibly important to be assertive. And assertive means having the right thinking. This is my job. This is what we need to be doing. I know how we can do this. Right thinking really takes into account that you've thought it through. You not only know what needs to be done, but you also know how to help the team get there. You've thought through all the different concerns and questions or issues that team members might have. You're prepared to address them. You're confident. And when you're confident, you're going to have, the right body language, the right behaviors, number 3 on the affirmative, on the assertive communication. But because you have the right thinking, physiologically speaking, your body is going to be aligned with what your messaging is. And your messaging there, which is number 2, is really about, and the only reason it's number 2 is because it is the second most important part. And that's making sure you use the right speaking. The right speaking is a measure of saying, I realize that, I understand. It's acknowledging what's going on in the team. It's raising and surfacing their concerns. At the same time, we're also addressing it in such a way that, you're going to be able to attend to those needs. You're expressing your own feelings in this particular time. And at the same time, you're making clear what needs to be done. So when we think about assertive communication, it's really a mix of coming into it with the right thinking. As we engage with our teams, we're using the right speaking that acknowledges the current situation. It validates feelings, especially makes yours known, but it also shows them that through your thought process, that you've not only considered these things, but you've included them in your planning. And with those things in mind, you're going to be much more confident going into these conversations, and therefore you're going to have the right behavior. That's what being assertive is about. Now, how this is often confused is with being authoritative. Now, assertive and authoritative, for us from the English context, just the words themselves we can easily distinguish, but the behavior of being assertive and the behavior of being authoritative is often a very fine line that can be abused quite easily, because even though we have the right thinking and what we believe to be the right speaking, we could try to force this point. We could act in a way that doesn't take into account the needs and the understanding of those that we're working with. So to be assertive, it's not just about seeing things from our perspective, but making sure we're communicating, taking into account the perspective of others. And that's largely that difference. Authoritative is largely coming from your perspective, where being assertive is really taking into account the perspective of others and being very clear in terms of the information you have and being clear in terms of the way forward. At the same time, it's all about controlling your body in such a way that it's not going to raise the emotional warning levels of those that you're speaking with. And combined, that is what being assertive is. And when we engage in the purposeful work of our team, if we can be assertive, we can be more reassuring and calming to our team. We can help to demonstrate the way that we want them to communicate with each other as well, especially in these stressed environments where, the stress can actually get the best of people, and they might find themselves demonstrating behaviors that are not typical of them, that are stress induced. And the only concern is when people behave in a way that is based from stress, is, grounded from stress. It's very easy for others to take those behavioral demonstrations and attribute it to their character. It's very easy for them to create narrative of others in these types of situations that are unfair and will be lasting, thus inhibiting future collaboration. So by being able to demonstrate this and help your team members be able to communicate in a more assertive fashion, they're going to be much more successful in terms of collaborating with each other, even under the current circumstances that they're experiencing right now.